What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be doing the best and worst performances from the championship week. Technically, the conference championship week. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. I make content like this all the damn time, damn near every single day. Let's get right into this. Let's have a great time because we're starting out with our all-stars of the week, and we have 5 of them. Or no, we have 6. I couldn't narrow it down. It was surprising because for this episode, I honestly thought that, by the way, we're starting out with TJ Parker, but for this episode, I thought that we were going to have a very big issue with finding, because when we normally do this week by week, we look at every single game, and this is a significantly smaller quantity of said games. But, actually we ended up going to the fact that I was like, man, I got to start combining players to be able to say, oh, well, we kind of had to twist my arm a little bit just to be able to make things work in terms of we had so many players that I was very surprised. So it was a very good week. I got to watch the majority of the games, but speaking of a game I did not enjoy watching too much, I enjoyed the viewership part, but not actually as an SMU alum. Watching TJ Parker absolutely slice and dice my SMU Mustangs. 7 pressures, 5 defensive stops, 73 defensive grade, and I believe on the first or second play, a forced fumble. This dude's done it multiple weeks in a row, hence why he has the golden star. Now we're going to talk about Cam Scatterbo, because I'm going to spend a little bit more time on the guys who are actually going to be draft eligible. But Cam is an absolute beast. He essentially is the we have Ashton Genty at home type of running back in this class. Hard runner, good contact balance, solid vision, kind of someone who also stumbles into open holes when he starts bouncing off of dudes. And I think that he's done a fantastic job this year. He's been on this list so many times that, it's nearly as much as Ashton Genty. He's done a fantastic job. Now, he came out and said, I'm the best running back in the country. I should be the Heisman. It's like, man, comparison's the thief of joy. First off, we're giving you all the credit in the world. The moment you start saying shit like that, we all kind of know that's not true. He's a very fun back, but you're not the most dynamic back. You have really good contact balance, but Ashton Genty kind of beats you in every category. But regardless of that, he's a fantastic running back. This week, 16 carries, 170 yards, 2 touchdowns, 11 missed tackles forced. The majority of those are on 2 big plays, but regardless, he had those Marshawn Lynch level beastquake plays. But on top of that, he had 2 targets, 2 receptions, 38 yards, and a touchdown as well. Grand total, 18 touches. 208 yards and 3 touchdowns. So excellent performance. Again, let's just not get ahead of ourselves. Let's enjoy how well he's played rather than letting Cam try to, put himself in a place where I think we kind of all understand he doesn't fully belong. But great selection for him. He's going to be a great selection. Going to be a 4th round pick most likely. I highly doubt he goes higher than that just based on the athletic limitations. This dude can get caught from behind. But looking at a team like the Dallas Cowboys where they're looking at someone who's going to be a primary back that can handle going into the hole, taking a hit, and then also kind of delivering the pain. That's the exact style of running back that you're looking for. Maybe he ends up being a 3rd round pick. I mean, Jonathan Brooks, I didn't really like him to that degree, but he ended up being a 2nd round pick. I mean, it's so unfortunate what happened to him because I think he's out again now with another knee injury, non-contact. It's so it's the issue you run, no pun intended, when you end up taking running backs with injuries. Cam Scatterbo, not going to be that. But regardless, the point of that is saying running backs can go in an order that you do not expect. But Cam Scatterbo, fantastic performance. Obviously a superstar of the week, an all-star of the week, and a big reason why Arizona State kicks some ass. And not number, because we're not doing a mock draft. Next guy who's an all-star of the week is Trey Stewart from Jacksonville State. I mean, this dude absolutely lit it up. 27 carries, 501, that'd be insane. 201 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, 5 missed tackles forced. On top of that, he had 4 targets, 3 receptions for 54. Grand total, 30 touches, 255 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Again, a fantastic performance. Jacksonville State, I think they're 2 years into FBS, if I'm not mistaken, and they already won their CUSA title. So congrats to them, but Trey Stewart, a big reason for that. I think the quarterback as well also ended up having like 160 rushing yards off the top of my head. So, shout out to Jacksonville State for being able to make the most out of what they got. Tez Johnson's next, wide receiver out of Oregon. He was targeted 12 times, got 11 receptions for 181 yards and a touchdown. I hate this solely because I bet on Tez Johnson having under 40 yards in the second half. This guy was one of my parlay busters, and, so screw you, Tez, but at the same time, you guys know how much I love Tez Johnson. I was just expecting Oregon to be up, which they had an early lead, but I was kind of hoping that the running backs would take over from there. Tez Johnson, fantastic performance. I mean, again, this guy is extremely underrated. People just don't give him the respect he deserves. Tank Dell is a perfectly adequate comp for him. Like, he's a really dynamic receiver. It's not just because he's small, but it's because he's a really good route runner, but he's even better as a blocker compared to what you see at 165. Like, he's a very, very, very good receiver. And, I'm proud to say that he was, I believe, in my top 15 receivers coming into the year. Then we got Dalen Everett. So all those people are just talking about him being burnt toast every time you see him. I'm not hearing them talk too much shit right now. He had an 85 defensive grade. He had 1 defensive pressure. He targeted 9 times, allowed 3 receptions for 47 yards, but he had 2 interceptions in a pass breakup. Isaiah Bond, low-key, ended up tipping, just one of the interceptions, I think, was more on Isaiah Bond's inadequacy than, Dalen Everett's excellence. Dalen Everett does not have very good ball skills, so the fact that he did this is a reason why I really wanted to highlight him. He is a very good corner. He just doesn't have he looks like he's starting to grow in terms of being against the, pass defense realm, but we'll see about that. We'll see. But when it comes to ball skills, he definitely lacks in that category, and I think that's why a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate him for the talent he is. And if that continues in the NFL, they're going to be 100% right. But I see that he does pretty much everything else really damn well. And if he works on that one area of his game, I really do think you could turn a lot of these yards and catches into interceptions or pass breakups. So Dalen Everett did a fantastic job. Georgia ended up, of course, winning, and Dalen Everett was a big part of that. Then we got Elijah Roberts. This guy's been shouted out quite a few times because he's had a ton, and I mean a ton of love on this show. But he's an edge rusher at 295 pounds. Very, very interesting build. But regardless, 76 defensive grade, 8 pressures, and a defensive stop in a very solid game that went down literally to the last play and had a true freshman have to kick a 56-yarder when he had yet to kick anything longer than a 51. So, got to give his credit where credit's due. Elijah Roberts went up against 2 very solid college tackles, and Tristan Lee, as well as, why am I forgetting the tackle that I actually really like? Now I feel old. I feel old when I forget guys' names like that. But regardless, Blake Miller's the name I was thinking of. But Tristan Lee, Blake Miller, 2 very solid tackles. Elijah Roberts generating 8 pressures, not exclusively against those 2. I'm sure some of those were versus running backs, etc. But credited with 8 pressures in general with those tackles who both let up multiple pressures. You got to give credit where credit's due. SMU kicked some ass on that defensive line after the first quarter. Then we'll talk about the rest of these stock up guys, the actual just base stars of the week rather than the all-stars of the week. Starting with Ahmad Moses, another SMU defensive back. He ended up not even starting this game, but he ended up being a great impact. 87 defensive grade, 2 defensive stops, targeted 4 times, allowed 1 reception for 6 yards, that being a touchdown. Otherwise, if he did not allow that touchdown, he would have been probably an all-star of the week with 3 pass breakups on top of that. So, fantastic performance from Ahmad Moses. Then we got Bryant Wesco Jr. I'm going to be 100% honest. I was just seeing some random name pop up, and it's 50 yards over or under for Clemson. I'm like, fuck this. I'll just go under. I don't know this guy. And, I got a you don't know ball moment right there where I didn't even, I haven't been tracking Clemson's offense the way I should have. And Bryant Wesco, this dude's an absolute fucking savage. I mean, true freshman. What's up with the 3 true freshman receivers? Now, granted, Ryan Williams cooled off a lot. He's had, I think, 6 drops in, the past 4 weeks. It's not looking too great for him in terms of hands. But regardless, I mean, Wesco, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, legitimate trio of superstars that are true freshmen. And I'm sure there are other guys in there as well. But those are the ones that come to mind. But regardless, this guy just ends up showing up and saying, fuck you, you want to bet against me? Literally the first quarter, this guy already beat what I ended up predicting. And 8 receptions on 11 targets, 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. This guy was an absolute beast. So great job for Wesco. We're going to be in for a treat for the next couple of years. Jeremiah Irby is next, Boise State corner. I know, I just ended up slurring my words. I promise you, my BAC is 0, blood alcohol content, for those of you guys who do not know that acronym. But Jeremiah Irby, Ashton Jeanty, we got 2 Boise State guys on both sides of the ball. Irby ended up having a 79 defensive grade, targeted 7 times, only allowed 1 completion for 15 yards, and on top of that, he had an interception and a pass breakup, so good job for him. Ashton Jeanty did what Ashton Jeanty does. 32 carries, 209 yards, a touchdown, 2 receptions, 14 yards, grand total 34 touches, and 223 yards on top of a touchdown. So good job for Jeanty, doing what he always does. Hopefully medicals end up showing that he's not going to just be a 1-contract guy, which I swear to God, I'm going to take a quick moment here to talk about that. Like when players fall, because it's like, oh, he's only going to be there, like his knee's going to go after a contract. Like, I understand, like, certain teams are like, oh, well, we really like 2 guys, and one guy's more healthy, like, we'll go with that. But when players like Peyton Wilson, who genuinely belonged in the 2nd round, end up slipping to pick 90 because, oh, his knee is not going to be great, and you're seeing these bums taken before him who, I mean, you don't even know if they're going to be on your team in 2 years. It's like, dude, take the guy you know is going to be on your team for 5 years and then search for one of those developmental guys to sit behind him. Like, I don't understand why it's like crazy idea. Like running backs, like, oh man, Ashton Jeanty might only last his rookie contract. Imagine 5 years of a dude carrying your entire offense while you build around him. Like, I'm sorry. I know that it might be bad GMing because you want to get those guys who are on your team for multiple contracts, but it's also bad GMing trying to throw shit at a wall that's not sticking when you know it might just be a small amount of shit. It's going to stick, right? I just got to admit. You got to do a little rant a Rooney right there. But next, we got the Georgia edge rushers. You see how I like to squeeze them together because this list only fits 10 guys, and I want to be able to shout out a little bit more. But Mikael Williams and Jalen Walker, both of them had 5 pressures each, and Jalen Walker had 3 defensive stops, while Mikael had only 1. Jalen Walker also was targeted 1 time, allowed a reception, but only for -2 yards. And then apparently Mikael Williams, 66 defensive grade. Jalen Walker, it is what it is, but 64. I mean, both of them fantastic players. Jalen Walker, of course, not a pure edge, also a linebacker, but regardless, amazing talents nonetheless. Andrew Makuba went off. Good job for him. He was almost in the All-Stars of the week, but he had an 82 defensive grade. He had 6 defensive stops, a forced fumble, and he had 1 target, 1 reception for -2 yards. On top of that, he did generate a pass breakup. He's been having a really strong end of the year. It looks like Texas finally knew how to unlock him. And so it's great to see. I mean, to me, he was a developmental NFL prospect, which means that you're a pretty damn solid college guy. And, Bakuba is certainly showing that Texas picking him up was the right move. And, I mean, they kicked Jedi Barron out to the boundary because I believe they were bringing Bakuba to play the slot. And, Jedi Barron's thrived on the boundary as well, which I was a little bit worried about at the start of the year. Anyway, he ended up this week having 80 defensive grade, 2 defensive stops, targeted 3 times, allowing 0 completions for a pass breakup and an interception. Granted, the interception was literally one of the dumbest throws I've ever seen, only to be replaced moments later by Kevin Jennings making the exact same kind of throw. So, it is what it is. But, there's certain quarterbacks that ended up, feasting, air quotes, on quarterbacks making bad decisions. I'm not going to give Jedi Barron really that much credit for the interception because it literally was lofted, no one around, and right into his arms. And a lot of people were like, oh, I'm disgusted that he didn't turn into a pick 6. Who gives a shit? I mean, he ended up catching the ball. I think that's the biggest start there. And so good job for Jedi Barron. Did a fantastic job, literally allowing 0 yards, while also having an interception and a pass breakup is amazing. Trevor Etienne almost didn't make the list, but I had to do it because, he literally played hurt and still kind of won Georgia the game. 16 carries, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns, along with 5 missed tackles forced, 5 targets, 5 completions for 28 yards. Grand total, that is 21 touches for... What the hell is that? Was that 122 yards total and 2 touchdowns. Math was a strong suit of mine. Doing 94 plus 28 should have been a lot easier because I could have pulled the 6 and then just done 100 plus 22. But regardless, Trevor Etienne getting over 120 yards and 2 touchdowns. Fantastic performance for him because, again, he literally was saying, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to play. I think he had a rib injury, so that's not fun. I mean, getting hit 21 times at the very minimum, or maybe not hit 21 times, but, on the majority of those carries, getting some contact, not very enjoyable. But he ended up doing a lot of the work there for Georgia. Coming into the year, he was my running back 1. That did end up slipping. We'll be doing a running back video shortly because I did end up seeing some UNC offense tape on all 22, and I'm so excited for that. Then we have Josh Moten out of Marshall. I love Marshall players. He had an 86 defensive grade. He had a defensive stop, 4 targets, 1 reception, 9 yards, interception, pass breakup on top of that. So good job again. In big moments when you get to see these players have both interceptions and pass breakups, it allows you to at least understand that first off, they're taking advantage of balls that are tipped in the air or, lurking. And then for the pass breakup, it means that you're being able to at least make an impact on the ball. So good job for Josh Moten there. And Abdul Carter, of course, how can I leave him out of this? He had 6 pressures, a defensive stop that was beautiful, by the way. I know that I believe this is what the defensive stop was, but it's on X everywhere. He ended up literally reading, I believe, a tunnel screen. Regardless, a short pass. And he diagnosed it right away and ended up making a huge tackle. Great for him, but he did allow 24 yards on the only target his way, leaving him with a 67 defensive grade. Abdul Carter's an absolute savage. What do we got to say? Now let's talk about the guys who are stocked down. Malachi Starks got fucking cooked. 57 defensive grade, 1 defensive stop. He was targeted 8 times and allowed 6 receptions for 136 yards and a touchdown. My one note about Malachi Starks is that he was a limited athlete coming into the year. Some people thought that he had crazy range, and, to be fair, I am not the exact person who, my eyes are not, lasers where I'm able to see how fast someone's going. Like, I'd be a pretty shitty cop because I'd have to use the laser the whole time. My eyeballs are not necessarily elite in that aspect. However, I didn't see Malachi Starks being a game-changing athlete in any way, shape, or form. Granted, my eyes are not that bad. I tend to be able to tell when someone has athleticism versus not. But for defensive backs, sometimes they're just a little bit more reserved. Tyler Nubin, for example, well, to be fair, he had a shitty combine. But you know what? Maybe I'm not that bad. But but regardless, Malachi Starks, my one note of him was like, hey, this guy's great all around. I'm a little bit worried about his athleticism. I think Matt Golden was a player who I was supposed to include in this, but he had a couple drops. Matt Golden toasted him, and it's like, why are you putting a limited athlete on a deep threat? It just doesn't make sense to me, and that's why he got cooked. But regardless, you can't just allow him to you can't allow that slide. He ended up getting really cooked, and I do think that he would end up going to a team like the Dolphins that are losing Javon Holland. But at the same time, you got to start wondering, well, I mean, at what cost? Right. Like, I don't know if he's going to be really worth that number 12 or 11 pick. I'm trying to remember, though, what the current order is, but games are still going on, so we'll see. Barrett Carter is next. I say Barrett Carter's next, but, we're now just jumping into the rest of the stock down dudes. He ended up not really being someone. Him and Avion Terrell were both guys I didn't want to include on this list, but, again, didn't have 10 dudes. It's pretty hard to be stock down. It's a lot easier to be stock up. I'll straight up have a ton of dudes in stock up that are not even listed on there. But on stock down, it's like, you have to have some form of stock to begin with, right? But regardless, Barrett Carter ended up having a 71 defensive grade. He had good defensive play on versus the run, 5 defensive stops. And he did have, though, 6 targets, 4 completions, 38 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pass breakup. You just can't allow 2 passing touchdowns when you're guarding guys. That's just my thing. Avion Terrell is next, though. 63 defensive grade, 2 defensive stops, 9 receptions on 11 targets for 94 yards and a pass breakup. I thought that he was just, sometimes guys just get cooked, but Avion gets cooked the right way to where he's still able to make a play here, a play there. I didn't think he actually did that badly, but again, I would be hoping for a lower percentage on the completion side. Then you got the actual guys who I think ended up deserving being on this list. Tristan Lee starting out, 4 pressures and a 55 pass blocking grade. I think he might have to be a guard at the NFL level, but we'll see about that. Carson Beck, I know he got hurt, and the dude literally is like a hero. First off, where the hell is Georgia's 3rd string quarterback? Why would you send Carson Beck with one arm out there to also use that arm to hand off the ball? I don't think we're realizing that. The dude, I believe, ended up using his right arm to hand off the ball. Do you not have a 3rd string quarterback on Georgia? It was absolutely fucking wild. But regardless, Beck still sucked when he was in. 34 offensive grade, 33 passing grade, 13 throws, 7 completions for 56 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. But here's the kicker. 0 touchdowns, 2 turnover-worthy plays, and then he had 1 carry for, I believe, 0, or no, why does it say 0 carries for -1? Maybe it was a sack, and it ended up being a fumble. I'm like, oh, brother. I mean, he needed to dominate this game because the big poo smear on his record is the way that he played last time versus Texas. And hopefully he ends up like getting healthy. I highly doubt it based on that. Like, it was a real bad hyperextension, if I'm not mistaken. His arm was all the way back and got freaking cranked. And I mean, like, anybody who lifts knows, like, that's going to hurt like a bitch. So, I mean, I doubt he ends up being the quarterback going forward. And hopefully he can heal up just so he can end up not ending on that note. I hate when quarterbacks end on such a sour note, and I just really do hope that he is not going to be there with, his final game literally being 2 turnover-worthy plays and doing nothing positive. But regardless, Isaiah Bond's next. I'm honestly going to be doing a return to school video because I do think I have a much bigger clarity on who should return to school. And Isaiah Bond's going to be one of them. I mean, he's a dude who's worth a first-round pick who's just not been healthy. This game, he had 1 target, or 2 targets, 1 reception for 22 yards. And, he was hurt. I could see him limping a lot of the times. And I'm like, dude, just please get healthy. Like, please. And I've been seeing it all year long. This dude is just not playing healthy. And he's not dominating either. That's the problem. And thank God for Matt Golden. I love Matt Golden. But regardless, I really hope Isaiah Bond returns to school and ends up just dominating with Arch. Like, just do yourself that favor, buddy. And also, next year's wide receiver class doesn't look that fantastic. Don't stay 2 more years because then you're going to have to deal with the Jeremiah Smiths of the world. But, next year seems like it's a little bit more ripe for you to be able to take that top receiver spot or at least compete for it. Gunnar Helm's next, in a game where I was really hoping for him to shine versus some solid linebacker talent. So you think about Jalen Walker, but you also think about, it's not Jamon Dumas Johnson. I'm forgetting Smell Mondon. Like, there's just a lot of linebackers in general in Georgia. I'm forgetting the guy who I ended up mentioning last week for having a really good game. But with all the linebacker talent on Georgia, I was hoping for more than 2 targets, 1 reception for 11 yards and a drop. Like, just simply put, if you're being discussed as a 3rd-round tight end, you got to do a lot better than that, buddy. Especially the drop's the cherry on top. Like, sometimes you're just not featured in offense. It happens, right? It does happen. If you get 2 targets and you catch 1 ball for 11 yards, it's like, damn. Like, I could say that about Isaiah Bond, but Isaiah Bond was also hurt. And also, on that second target, that was an interception for Dalen Everett. So, like, with Gunnar Helm, the other throw was a drop. And then you got Evan Stewart. I mean, another guy who needs to return to school, man. I mean, literally 1 target, 0 yards, 0 completions. Like, straight up, goose-egged. Like, he had 1 target, did nothing. Obviously, if he ends up having a really strong end of the year, again, you sometimes just aren't really featured. But, Evan Stewart's had those games that have been excellent, but he's also had those games that have been just very, very underwhelming. And, in Oregon, it's very surprising because I'm not used to seeing that. You're used to seeing solid production across the board, but they've been very hot and cold in terms of who's producing and who's not. Then you got Johnny Cornelius ending this off. He ended up being cooked by Abdul Carter a couple times, 5 pressures allowed as well, with 45 pass blocking grade. Bottom line, Johnny's supposed to be that just dude who you can get in the 3rd, 4th, maybe 5th round, and it's just going to, kind of be a solid plug-in guy. I will say it's starting to get to the point where it's like, man, maybe you are going to be that later day 3 kind of guy, just because if you can't handle Abdul to the point where you're allowing 5 pressures, I really got to start evaluating what you can do when you're facing Myles Garrett, right? And whenever a tackle ends up allowing anything more than 4 pressures, I really have to watch and sit down and watch that game and make sure that I'm comfortable with why you lost in terms of, do I think that this is going to be a perpetual issue in the NFL? With Olu Fashanu, he allowed 6 pressures versus Ohio State last year. And it's like, ooh. But I watched the game and I'm like, I still see a tackle in him. I still see a legitimate star tackle in him. So if you can love someone through their failures, and for those of you guys who are wondering, you're just starting out, you guys want to have some advice as to man, I don't really know where to start, watch players' worst games. And if you don't like a lot of players, good. A lot of these guys don't work out, man. I mean, that's just the truth. But if you just go and you watch their worst games and you're like, man, I actually really like this guy. That's what happened to me at Andrew Phillips. I saw him lock down Lad McConkey, and I was like, damn, what the hell? Like, he actually had some reps where he was doing a really good job. And it's like, sometimes just put your balls on the table, but always be honest with yourself and always be willing to watch games that would make you uncomfortable. Watching a player you like have struggles is not going to be enjoyable. But, for this game with the Johnny Cordelius, I'm definitely going to watch it because as much as I want him to be that Mr. Old Reliable, might not be something that is going to be really a good idea based on the fact that, well, if this doesn't work, because he's going up against a 265-pound edge rusher. Well, actually, he did not. That was our SMU tackles, but he's going up against a 255-pound edge rusher. Like, if he can't handle power, or like I saw a couple times the speed got around the edge, it's like, do I have to kick you to guard because you don't have the mobility? There's a lot of questions you got to ask. But regardless, that was the little end section there for those of y'all who continue asking me questions about like my board and how I grade everything. And it's like, it's so daunting, guys. Just start out with something. Like, don't imagine it to be pretty, but just start. That's all I can tell you. But I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.